It's history in the making. Lisa Hanna, the second woman to run for the post of president of the People's National Party. It's happening 28 years after Portia Simpson Miller's first attempt. But almost 3 decades later, can she deliver? Hello, I'm Damian Mitchell, and thank you for joining us for this special Gleaner Editors Forum. Today, Lisa Hanna, the St. Anne Southeastern MP, who will face off with Mark Golding in the November 7 PNP presidential election. Ms. Hanna, let's take it right there. Will you deliver on D-Day?
Absolutely. I'm excited, I'm confident, and I look forward to making sure that Jamaica receives not only its second opposition leader, but also its second prime minister, because I intend to move the PNP with energy so that we get back to Jamaica House.
I note this stealth, though, with which you are approaching this election, not the usually very visible, very flamboyant Lisa Hanna. Why?
You know, I think there is a real interesting dynamic to what you just said, and that I'm stealth. I am somebody who believes that right now, in terms of rebuilding our internal structures and mechanisms and healing, that we need to do it outside of the public's eyes. For too long, the PNP, in many ways, has discussed a lot of what we do internally, externally. And what it does is it doesn't give us the ability to have one-on-one frank discussions, things that are personal, things that need sometimes deeper discussion. And you need to do those things away from the eyes of the press, from the eyes of the public, and really come back to a sense of love and compassion and nurturing. And those things are done best behind closed doors. And so it's not as if I'm not public. I mean, I have been public when I need to be, but these working with our comrades and working internally to try and, you know, pacify and love. We came out of a very bruising election, and some persons are still a little battle worn, and we need to do that outside of the public. And so I took a deliberate decision with my campaign team to be more on the ground, out of the public's eye, reaching out, speaking directly to, because a large part of building unity is making sure that people can speak their truth in a setting that they're comfortable, and in terms of reconciling differences where people feel that they can trust the people around them. And oftentimes when you have the press, or oftentimes when you have people that they don't know, they're not as forthcoming with information. So I've preferred doing it that way. And if you followed my political career over time, there are lots of things that I do away from the public. I think because of my social media, people believe that everything that I do is public. It's actually not true.
Well, can you identify then 3 things you are now doing to bring back the love lost among your councillors in St. Anne Southeast?
Well, I have 3 councillors. One that we work very, very closely with. The other 2, one, as you know, who challenged me. And one of the things that I've done is reached out. And it's not as if we don't know what is going on in the constituency. We still have dialogue in terms of writing and giving information, inviting to meetings, etc. So I don't believe that it is accurate to say that we don't work together. We have to work together in instances. And for instance, with Lydia, my councillor, I've met with Lydia after the election. She's retiring from active politics, and I wish her all the best with that. There's a young guidance councillor teacher who is taking over as a candidate, and I've asked her to be on the ground with him, and she is.
So you're saying that it's not accurate to say you're not working together, but is there love lost?
Well, I think over the years, it's no secret. I mean, Lydia challenged me. You know that I went to Southeast St. Anne because some of the same names that you speak about were a part of a situation where a sitting cabinet minister couldn't finish her first term. She was MP. But I don't want to dwell on that. I think we need to move past that now. I think that you've spoken about that a lot, and I'd like to really speak about the future of where we're going with the party.
We're heading right there, but just before we move there, let's just clear this issue here, because I'm getting a question from Facebook. This is Boss Etas Bell, and this person is asking you to explain exactly what you meant by the statement that was carried on radio recently. If I knew that I would be running for party leader, then I would have treated a lot of people differently, especially the ones who support I will need to ensure victory.
Is that those are the direct words of what I said, or is he relaying what he thought I said?
I think this is a paraphrasing.
Okay. What I was saying in a very closed setting to comrades and family was when I started out on my political journey. I was a very young woman, not experienced in the political world, and typically coming from a different form and organizational structure. Oftentimes we believe that we can just check the boxes and speak to people in terms of asking for things to be done. And all constituencies have a culture. And what I was saying to my comrades there was, look, in my early 30s, perhaps how I handle a situation at that time is not the same way I would handle it now in my mid-40s, having had 13 years of parliamentary experience, 13 years as a member of parliament on the ground, 8 years as a regional chairman. I'm an officer of the party. And so you come to learn over time how to deal with, working with different people who are older, who are younger. So it wasn't to say that if I knew I was running for a particular position, I would not have done. That is not what I was trying to convey at all. I think it was taken out of context completely.
Yes. Ms. Hanna, how do you score the performance, though, of the party secretariat, particularly in the past 2 years?
Well, as a member of the officer corps, and I can say to you that we have tried very, very, very hard, and it has been a collective effort. There's no doubt that we were preparing. Our candidates were in place. We were very, very prepared in terms of going into any election that we would have faced. No one anticipated that we would have had a leadership challenge last year in June. And so what that did was it stopped the momentum that we were moving forward with. And when you have any kind of internal challenge at the end of an election cycle, it's difficult to really bring everybody back together. And when you have that kind of division, it's hard to continue the kind of organizational structure. I think we, in the instant circumstances, I also believe with COVID, that we mounted and did the best that we could with a snap election that Andrew Holness had called. Because if you recall, he said that there was no election on the horizon. And then he decided to go ahead and call a snap election in the middle of a COVID situation. And not only did he do that, but he did it in a period right after there was independence, right after there would have been community spread. And then something else that the cabinet did, I believe it was either the Monday or Tuesday before the Thursday on election, he announced that COVID positive patients would be able to vote. Now, I don't know if you come from a rural area, Damien, but we can tell you, saying that the rural areas, the elderly did not want to come out. So we faced different things from different angles, but I think the deepest one that we faced was the internal challenges that plagued us, because not only did that happen, but then it became relationship management going in. So rather than focusing on the enemy on the outside, quote unquote enemy, we were actually dealing with how to manage building the unity coming out of that deep internal situation last year.
So in other words, you're giving the party a full 10 out of 10 in terms of its performance.
I'm giving the party a good grade in terms of what I know we put up, what I know we had to raise. Money would have been, we had to raise money last year for the internal election. So any money that we would have raised last year, would have been difficult to go back to some of the funders as a treasurer for this year. And so persons have to look at the practical aspects of what happened to us last year, which was relatively, because we were expecting an election basically in March to May. So if you have an internal challenge and an election on September 7th, last year, 2019, and you now have September, October, November, December, you really have just 6 months to galvanize again and glue back together. it would have been incredible to believe that you could have congealed, but I want to really say that we gave it our all. The candidates gave it their all. They were in the field and never came off the ground. The Secretariat was working with them. We had teams that were in there. I was on the ground across the country. So we really, really gave it our all. And I think in the end, when I looked at some of the polling, a lot of the persons said they stayed home because the internal conflicts of the PNP and the internal division, they were just tired of it.
Is there merit to concern emanating, I think yesterday, with a picture floating on social media depicting the party chairman Fitzjackson at one of your meetings?
The party chairman is also the chairman of the constituency I was in, South St. Catherine. And he, as a chairman, as with all heads of executives, how we operate as a party is that both, if I'm sure if Comrade Golding wants to go in, the chairman would also welcome him to the constituency. It is not as if he endorsed me at that meeting. He was just saying, look, because of the democratic process, and because I'm the member of parliament, and because I'm the chairman of the executive, I'm here to welcome Comrade Hanna to the constituency and have her make her presentation. It was really courteous on his behalf to do so.
So in no way does it interfere with the independence of the Secretariat?
No, it doesn't interfere with the independence of the Secretariat. As a matter of fact, even last year, former Chairman Emeritus and former Chairman, Bobby Pickersgill was, when we went to Northwest St. Anne, and we know he was supporting Peter Bunting at the time, welcomed the Peter Phillips team and welcomed Peter Phillips to his constituency. And he was a part of that meeting. So no, it doesn't interfere with it at all.
Well, let me break here to bring in Erica Virtue, who has a question, and then we get to another matter. Erica?
Sure.
Okay, so Ms. Hanna, the PNP in the 1970s challenged the ethos of the era and implemented a legislative reform agenda, accomplishments of which the party still celebrates today. Will a PNP under Lisa Hanna once again draw on legislation to recapture some of those gains that were brought on to empower future generations?
The absolute answer is yes. Absolutely yes. And especially now when the world seems to be moving more in terms of political confrontation and cultural confrontation rather than having any kind of reconciliation. Jamaica has to find its footing, not only to survive post-COVID, but it also has to find its footing in progressive internationalism, because we have to not only survive, but prevail. There are a lot of things that are happening on the ground now, Erica. One, we are witnessing the greatest education crisis, I would say, since persons have had access to education back in when Norman Manley was head of our party. And what I mean by that is the PNP has always been the party of education and access to education. But right now, and if you speak to various persons across the country, the virtual classroom cannot be accessed. I can speak locally when I meet with my principals and teachers. Many of them say only 25 to 50% of their classes are showing up online. So we have to be able to ensure that we have the kind of progressive legislation that continues to give ordinary Jamaican people and ordinary Jamaican children access to education. The other thing is that COVID has shown us that not only COVID, but things like Zika and things like chickpea, that you don't necessarily need the invasion of any physical army. All you need is a virus to wipe out your economy and change the way that you operate on a traditional basis with urgency. So our farming and agricultural sector has to completely pivot to make sure that we create value added, so that when tourism shuts down the way it did and our schools shut down the way it did, that we actually empower our farmers. So you have to now revolutionize agriculture, and this is something I've been saying for a long time. and really put in place a value-added agriculture and stimulate the agricultural industry to really produce the kinds of export agriculture while feeding ourselves. And that is going to take revolutionary approaches. The other thing that we have to do is balance people's immediate needs with their medium to long-term needs. And what do I mean by that? Many of our women now are the persons who have lost their jobs. Our mothers are not working. They are the backbone and the nurturers and caregivers of the society. So many of them have had to now balance between how are they going to buy food without working in the tourism industry, with buying the data to put on their phone. So we also have to make sure that at the grassroots level, we are empowering these generations of women who are coming up, and also their children. Or you're going to find that in another 2 or 3 years, you're going to have a functionally illiterate generation who cannot access education.
The common theme I'm hearing coming through here, though, Ms. Hanna, is that of leadership and management. You were a Peter Phillips supporter in the last presidential election 13 months ago. You provided support for him and for his campaign. He failed at uniting the party after, and importantly, at the general election. So what difference would you make as a PNP president?
Well, I want to make it very clear that I thought Peter Phillips would have made an excellent prime minister. He had the track record across health, finance, transport, security, and I still believe, had we won, that he would make an excellent prime minister. When you can't have political relationships if you don't have human relationships. And I was there and I saw Comrade Phillips really, really try. He had a very big tent. He brought everybody in. Persons who were on the other team were given shadow cabinet positions. They were given roles in the campaign. And he really, really tried. I don't think he failed at trying with the unity. I think where persons are misguided is because of the election defeat, that they're using that to judge what he did internally. And I think it is judging him unfairly.
Damien, can I just
yes,
have a follow-up?
Yes.
Ms. Hanna, if I could zoom in on,
for example, can call me Lisa, you know.
No, Miss Hanna, that's how my mother raised me.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could zoom in on the maternity leave law, for example, it's been widely practiced that employers give their employees three full months with pay, although the leave speaks to 2 months full pay and 1 month without pay. Would part of that legislative reform agenda seek to codify a full 3 months with pay, and also seek to include fathers as part of legislation, giving them some time off, start out with a month, 6 weeks or so?
I think you know my position on most of those, Erica, that I would support in principle those kinds of legislation, because I'm a big believer in family values and raising children, and it takes parents to be present in terms of raising children. But we are a party that believes in inclusion and consultation. And one of the things that we have to go back to is going back to our comrades, our delegates, our groups, or NEC to have robust discussions on these kinds of policy positions so that you get active participation. So the short answer to you is that there are a number of things that I'm going to be proposing coming from the Policy Commission. I'm actually proposing even 2 more commissions, if you looked on lisahanna.com, which looks at how an economic and empowerment commission, which looks at how we can move our per capita income in Jamaica over time to something meaningful that people can live on and that can grow. And also something else, which looks at how we're going to balance the role of the church also with science and progressive legislation. So that has to have wide consultation. But in principle, I support family values. I support parents being around children. I support incentives for mothers to be around their children. And I support people having access to food. Because one of the things that we are not focusing right now in as a country is the malnourished nature in which many of our children are growing up because our mothers just cannot afford the protein. It really is we import 23 million US dollars worth of chicken back every year because many of our mothers, that is a protein that they can afford to give their children. And so we also have to find a way to make sure that they can get the milk, the cheese, the protein, or the vegetable protein. There was also a time, Erica, that you speak about, when we had that kind of legislation where persons who really could not afford it could actually have access to food. And hunger is something, we're ending hunger is something that I'm a big believer in. And you'd be surprised at how many of the elderly, sometimes even when I speak to them, they don't have tea in the morning. And so if we don't focus on these issues too, we're looking at COVID, we really need to look at some of the primary illnesses that are going to happen to our elderly in terms of diabetes and how our younger children are going to grow up. And when they become teenagers and adults, if we don't give them nutrition starting early. So those are, and you know, I've never really said this, but as a mother, as a woman, there's a level of nurturing that I come to the table with. And when I speak to mothers and women in communities, for example, when many persons don't realize that $300 is what buys a meal for a family. It can buy a tin of mackerel and a pound of rice, or a pound of chicken back now is gone to $200. So there's some real problems that we're facing in Jamaica, apart from education and apart from COVID. There are real everyday existential realities that are piercing the livelihood of Jamaican families in this country that we need to attack immediately.
Time is really running away from us. Laverne Barrett has a question, and so too Janet Silvera. Let me take Laverne Barrett now.
The question I wanted to pose to you
Good morning.
Is the endorsement of Mr. Golding, your opponent, by the chairman of the RJR Gleaner group. Do you have a view on that endorsement, one? And two, do you believe it puts you at a disadvantage?
You know, I believe that is a view that can be quite controversial, especially with the journalists, because what I'm picking up from the media is that they have a view with it. I think Mark is entitled to have who he would like endorse him publicly, and I have no further comment on that.
So then let's move on to the matter of the Senate. Would you keep Norman Horn as a consideration for the Senate?
Well, Norman has been very clear on his position now, but we cross that bridge when we get to it. I think Norman is very talented. I think he's a smart businessman, and I think he would make a good senator.
Janet Silvera?
The fact that you have spoken about Norman Horn, I may as well go on to Peter Bunting. Peter Bunting was a thorn in the side of the Holness administration in parliamentary debates and discussions. Would you consider him for a place in your shadow cabinet or in the Senate? That's my first question to you. And the other question is, the voting numbers indicate that tens of thousands of PNP supporters did not turn out for the party in 2020 election. What's your strategy to revive their interest in the party?
One of the things about comrades that I can tell you is that comrades like to feel motivated. They like an electricity. They like to know that the party is moving in power. They like to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They like to know that the party is moving in power. They like to feel that PNP, when they come on the ground, there's a level of excitement and they want to feel that kind of energy. And they don't like to see comrades having any internal squabble. So, and they want a comrade and they want leadership that they know can beat the Jamaica Labour Party. And they want to know that for them leader can beat Andrew Holness, right? That gives them a degree of inspiration and motivation. And so for me, the first order of business is to get on the ground, to go into the constituencies. As a former region chair, I can tell you that was a part of my responsibilities in not only managing my own constituency, but the others in Region 1. You have to meet with comrades. You have to meet with not only delegates, but the supporters. You have to go into the communities and feel what is going on. That is who I am. I'm a street leader. I'm not an office leader. I've never been an office kind of person. I'm a leader for the streets. I'm a mature listening leader. And I'm somebody who is not afraid to go on the front line and stand up for ordinary Jamaican people to let them know that they have a voice that is their protection, that will give them direction, and that will help to make their lives and their economic and social lives better. So that's the first thing that I intend to do. And I think that will also help in motivating the comrades and the supporters to come back out when they see a united PMP who the country is rallying around, who the country can say, yes, we like what we're seeing, we like what we're hearing from the party. We're not hearing division, we're hearing one voice. And so that answers the first question. The second question.
It answers the second question. The first question is
no, I'm answering it how I want to answer it.
Said anything about whether or not you would take Peter Bunting.
So I'm answering that one now for you, Janet.
Okay.
In order to be in the shadow cabinet, you actually need to have a seat in Parliament. And so I think that begs the question of your 1A, which is whether or not I would consider Peter Bunting to go in the Senate, because Peter Bunting lost his seat. So he wouldn't have it from that end to go into the shadow cabinet.
Yes.
So as I said to Damien, when we get to that bridge, we cross it. I have not said publicly that I am asking the senators to resign. That is another thing that I believe that we should take. I've not said that I would wish the senators to resign.
But you have a Senate place that's available.
Absolutely. So when I become leader, I will take everything under consideration.
Our time is really leaving us, so we have to speed up a bit here. But
Sure.
The other question relates to the party finances. What really are your plans to boost party finances, Lisa Hanna?
Well, one is I'm currently the treasurer. So I have been raising money for the party since 2018 when Mark resigned. And we do it, we have particular party donors, we have international comrades who give us money from time to time. As comrades, we also make donations from our salaries as members of parliament and as councillors. So what it will take is now a level of fundraising initiatives. I think the private sector will be excited when they see a united PMP that is getting the country excited. I think persons in the diaspora will be very, very excited when they see a PMP, particularly because now you have two Jamaicans that are basically running for primary positions globally. You have Kamala Harris, who is in the United States, and you have Lisa Hanna, who is in Jamaica. And I think two very bright, intelligent women who are blazing a trail. And I think that can only augur well for Jamaica. And I've come out, I was one of the first people to come out in support of Kamala. So I think there are opportunities for other big fundraising and other digitally fundraising activities, which I'm looking into.
Well, we normally end with the fast five. You have 5 seconds to complete each answer. So here now are your fast five. Yes or no? Jamaica.
Or maybe so.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, I said yes, no, or maybe so.
Oh, no. I say we have 5 seconds.
You never play a ring game when you was young.
You will have 5 seconds to complete each answer, right? We call this the fast five. So yes or no to this question. Jamaica should move to legalize ganja. Your seconds are elapsing.
No, that has to be taken to the public with consultation, because there are a number of persons who we would have to consult. I think
assuming you have a deciding vote, Bob Marley or Peter Tosh, who would get your blessing for national?
God of mercy. If I had to do what?
Assuming you have the deciding vote, Bob Marley or Peter Tosh, who would get your blessing for national hero?
That one rough. I would have to ask for both of them to become national heroes. I'm sorry. Both.
True or false? Your government would pass legislation for paternity leave.
Yes.
Father Richard Holong or Edward Warmington, who would you ask to say prayers at your installation?
Oh, God.
Bishop Holness.
Mayor Motley or Portia Simpson Miller, who has been a more impactful CARICOM figure?
Oh, that's both of them have, and both of them serve at different levels. I think when Portia Simpson Miller served, she served with distinction. She fixed her economy. She brought poverty down to 9%. And she's now retired from active politics. I think Mia now has stepped into the video light and she's doing really well and I respect her.
Well, thank you so very much, Lisa Hanna, for joining us for this special Gleaner Editors Forum. Thanks for watching. I'm Damian Mitchell.